Have you ever wondered if it would be worth it to take someone to court? If you would win, or if it would be really expensive for you? So did a divorced client of mine. She was not getting enough money from her ex to take proper care of their children, and he owed her money besides that, but she was scared to take him to court. So she asked me, will I win in court next week? This is Karen White of Divine Time Astrology, and today we'll be looking at a simple court case, the principles involved, and what happened. And there will be a little quiz at the end to see how you do at remembering the principles involved. Also at the end, I'll tell you when the upcoming course, Learn Horary Astrology, starts, and there's a free download for you too. Court case horary charts are a lot like contest charts, but with some differences. This is a civil case, so it won't include the 12th house lord to represent jail and or prison. There are 4 players in a court case horary. Number 1, the querent, as usual, gets the 1st house lord, but not the moon as the co-significator. Because then, if she also had the moon to represent her, she would have twice as many chances to win, which wouldn't be fair. In this chart, the querent is represented by Mercury, and we see that because the 1st house lord here, the sign is Virgo. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and here's Mercury right here in the sign of Cancer. It's also combust the sun, as you can see, showing that she can't really see clearly at this time. Remember I mentioned that she was scared. Also, any planet in the sign of Cancer is exalting Jupiter, which we will see what Jupiter is in a second. So when she's exalting someone, this means that she sees them as being a lot more powerful than they are. The sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon, which is the judge in this chart, as we will also soon see. She's really hoping that he will rule in her favor. Okay, now the 7th house, the opponent, her ex, is represented by Jupiter in the sign of Aries. Mars is ruling his 2nd house of money. So seeing that he is ruled by Mars, because we see the sign of Aries here, which is ruled by Mars, means that he's very worried about his money, because he knows that this is why she's taking him to court. Also, any planet in the sign of Aries really doesn't like Saturn, and we'll see what Saturn is in a moment. The 10th is the judge, but in this case, as we see here, the 10th is Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is already being used by the querent, the person asking the question. So we have to take the next sign over, which we see here is the moon. And now you understand why the querent is ruled by the moon. And the moon is over here in the sign of Aquarius. And then finally, the 4th player is the 4th lord, which we can see here is Sagittarius on the cusp, which means ruled by Jupiter. Well, Jupiter's already being used by the opponent, her ex. So we have to take the next sign over, which is Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. Now, the 4th lord is the verdict. Whether there's a jury or not, it represents the legal process. Okay, so we've got 4 players, the querent, the opponent, the judge, and the end of the matter, the verdict. So what we need to do next is to see how the planets are feeling about each other. And we see this by the table of dignities as usual. And you can find this table of dignities in page 54 of John Frawley's book, the Horary Textbook, 2nd edition. Okay, so now for the rules for judging a court horary case. And these are not all of the rules. These are just the rules for this chart. There are no lawyers involved in this. They just went to court for a hearing, basically, is all this is. How are the planets feeling about each other? Well, if her ex was exalting her planet, then that would mean that they could settle out of court, because he would be seeing her as being very much more powerful than him, and it would be good to settle out of court. But if Lord 1 exalts the opponent, her ex, which we see here she is actually doing because her planet's in the sign of Cancer, but the chart shows that the querent will win, you tell the querent to keep quiet no matter what, no matter how much they want to cave in and settle out of court. She was scared. You know, he tried to basically scare her away from taking him to court. Next, we look to see what the judge likes, because that can really make a difference. So the judge's planet, the moon, is in the sign of Aquarius. This means he really likes Saturn. Well, Saturn is the querent's 5th house lord. It's also here in her 4th house too. But this is about the children. She's not getting enough money from him to take care of the children properly, and so this shows that the judge is more concerned with the children than he is with either one of the, which is the querent and her ex-husband. Now, if his planet were to like one of the other, like say he really liked the opponent, the ex, and it aspected his planet, and it was going to do that was the first thing it was going to do, then that would mean that the ex would win. But the judge is impartial. He's pretty impartial here. He's just caring about the children. And it doesn't make an aspect to either one of their planets anyway, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, and it's already past a possible aspect to her ex, and it's in a sign that doesn't even see her planet in the sign of Cancer, because this is an air sign and hers is a water sign, and those two signs are not compatible, so they don't see each other. But more important than anything is the 4th lord, which we know is represented by Saturn. Here is Saturn. It's right here, nearly right on the querent's cusp of her house. And it's in the sign of Virgo, which means the judge, or the legal process, the verdict, the end of the matter, is greatly favoring the querent. If this planet, however, had been aspecting her opponent's planet first, even though in the sign of Virgo, any planet in the sign of Virgo does not like Jupiter. So if it were aspecting his planet first and it's in a sign that doesn't like him, it would mean that he would win, but that he wouldn't win anything that he wanted. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that her planet is actually the one that is going to aspect it first. We see it's not going to happen for a while, but that's the first planet that's going to aspect it. And the verdict's planet doesn't even see the opponent's planet. So her planet aspects it first, and it really likes her anyway. It's exalting her even, so she wins. However, okay, so what she wanted was more of her ex's money. And his 2nd house is ruled by Mars, as we already said earlier. And Mars is over here in the sign of Virgo. Well, that's showing that his money is definitely going to be going to her, but Mars in the sign of Virgo, at this particular degree, it just has no dignity in this sign. Not yet, anyway. It will when it gets to over 24 degrees. Then it will have a little bit of strength, but it doesn't have much. So while she does win, and he is going to have to give her some of his money, it's not that much money. Now, this doesn't show how much money he actually has, only how much money she's going to get. Now, since she needed more money, every little bit helped. And she needed to see that taking him to court wasn't as scary as she thought it would be. It was still worth it to her to take him to court. Now, for the quiz. The 1st and the 7th lords are the contestants. What other house lords are involved in a court case? Number 2, what does it mean if the judge's planet likes one of the contestants' planets and aspects that contestant's planet first? Number 3, what does it mean if a contestant's planet aspects the 4th lord first, or vice versa, even if the 4th lord doesn't like that contestant? And number 4, why does the querent only get the 1st house lord to represent her and not the moon also as the co-significator like she would normally get in other horary charts. So pause the video, jot down your answers, and I'll be right back. So how do you think you did? Let's find out. The answers. Number 1, the 1st and the 7th lords are the contestants. What other house lords are involved in a court case? Answer, the 10th house lord for the judge and the 4th house lord for the verdict. Of course, unless either one of these house lords are already being used to represent the querent and the opponent. And then you take the next sign over and the planet that rules that to represent the judge and the verdict, as we saw here in this chart. Number 2, what does it mean if the judge's planet likes one of the contestants and aspects that contestant's planet first? Answer, if the judge likes one of the contestants and aspects that planet first, they win. Number 3, what does it mean if a contestant's planet aspects the 4th lord first, even if the 4th lord doesn't like that contestant? Answer, it means that the contestant wins, but if the verdict's planet doesn't like that contestant, they don't win much. Sometimes it can be only a penny. In this case, however, the verdict's planet really likes the querent and her planet aspects it first, so she wins. Number 4, why does the querent only get the 1st house lord to represent her and not the moon as the co-significator like she would get in most other horary charts? Answer, because it gives her twice as many opportunities to win, which would be unfair since a court case is essentially a contest. So how did you do? Next time I'll show you a simple real estate chart, another type of chart that can potentially save you and or your clients lots of money and aggravation. Now for the Learn Horary Astrology course coming up. I had decided on September 1st as the start date, but then I realized that September 1st is the Friday of the long Memorial weekend. So it's been amended to Tuesday, September 6th, after the Memorial Day weekend holiday. So have fun, and we'll get started after that weekend. This is the final and firm date for the course start. Before you go, notice below that there's a link to get your free download showing the required course materials, the recommended resources, and some best practices and tips for doing horary astrology yourself. Thank you for watching. This has been Karen White of Divine Time Astrology. So long until next time.